Good morning, everyone. This is Professor Muhammad Farghal. In this lecture, I'll be talking about sense relations. Last time, I talked about sense properties, both at word level or predicate level and at sentence level. Today, I'll start talking about sense relations, which also exist at word level and at sentence level. At word level, we have synonymy and hyponymy. These two sense relations are paralleled by two sense relations at sentence level, which are paraphrase and entailment. So my lecture today will start with synonymy, الترادف. Synonyms in language are words or predicates that have the same meaning or similar meaning. So if two words happen to have the same meaning, they are said to be synonyms. We cannot put all synonyms in one bag. The first that comes to mind is what most semanticists believe that it does not exist, that is, absolute synonyms or perfect synonyms. The common belief is that this goes against the principle of economy in language. So we are not supposed to have two predicates or two words that can be used in all possible contexts in the same way. This simply means that absolute synonyms or perfect synonyms do not exist. If we can imaginably use two words in all possible contexts, then one of them is supposed to disappear, because the existence of two words that perform the same functions in all imaginable contexts does not make sense, or this goes against the principle of economy. So semanticists usually exclude the presence of absolute synonyms. If this is so, what kind of synonyms we have in language? In fact, one can talk about three types of similarity in meaning. The most common type, and probably the most important type, is what we call cognitive synonyms. Cognitive synonyms are synonyms or words that share the same denotation. If they denote the same thing, then they are said to be cognitive synonyms. Die and pass away, for example, denote the same thing. That's why die and pass away are said to be cognitive synonyms. Notice that we cannot, because they share the whole denotation, we cannot negate one and affirm the other in the same sentence. So it's really nonsensical to say John did not die, he just passed away. Or John passed away, he did not die. Okay, both of them are contradictions. Why is that? Because die and pass away are cognitive synonyms, and denotation here is too much to sacrifice. We cannot sacrifice. If we did, then we'll end up producing a contradiction. There are scores of such synonyms in language. Hide and conceal, for example, are cognitive synonyms. That's why it doesn't make sense to say John did not hide his true feelings. He just concealed them. This doesn't make sense, or this is a contradiction simply because hide and conceal are cognitive synonyms. Wide and broad are cognitive synonyms. Deep and profound are cognitive synonyms. Buy and purchase are cognitive synonyms. They share, all these pairs of predicates share denotation. That's why one cannot be affirmed while the other is negated within the same sentence. A sentence like, John did not buy the car, he just purchased it, is a contradiction. And the contradictoriness here arises out of the fact that buy and purchase are cognitive synonyms. The second type of similarity in meaning involves near synonyms, or what we technically call them plesionyms. Plesionyms share part of the denotation, not the whole denotation, the way it is in cognitive synonyms. That's why it's possible to affirm one and negate the other within the same sentence. So pairs like love, like, dislike, hate, execute, murder, hot, warm, cold, cool. Not that these pairs, they are similar in meaning, but it's possible to affirm one and negate the other. For example, John does not love Mary, he just likes her. Yeah, this is an acceptable sentence. Why? Because love and like are plesionyms. The government did not execute the opposition leader. They murdered him. Again, this is acceptable. Why? Because execute and murder are plesionyms. They differ by the fact that one is legal, the other is illegal. Hot and warm are plesionyms. My coffee isn't hot, just warm. This sentence is acceptable. Why? Because hot and warm are plesionyms. Notice that both cognitive synonyms and plesionyms are psychologically real at word level. This simply means that this kind of similarity in meaning is recognizable at word level. If you stop someone and ask him about the relation between hot and warm, or the meaning of hot and warm, that he will probably tell you that they are similar in meaning. The same applies to buy and purchase. So their synonym here is recognizable at word level. You don't have to have a context in order to show that hot and warm are similar in meaning, or buy and purchase are, or they have the same meaning, or have a similar meaning. Why? Because they are psychologically real at word level. A third type of synonymy or similarity in meaning may exist contextually rather than in isolation, at word level, in isolation. And such synonyms are called contextual synonyms. And contextual synonyms are all around, especially in literature. Creative writers use attributes, for example, to denote the whole word. For example, white may be used to mean snow. Does it mean snow at word level? At word level, it doesn't mean snow, but you might find it used. The white, for example, was so impressive. The writer may, all right, can mean that by white here, you could mean that, he could mean snow. So white and snow here become contextual synonyms. Get and buy can be contextual synonyms. Notice that get and obtain are cognitive synonyms. Buy and purchase are cognitive synonyms. So horizontally, we have cognitive synonyms. But if we go vertically, for example, get and buy, at word level, they are not recognized as synonyms, but we can create contexts in which they are used synonymously. For example, in the act of buying something, they become synonymous. I'm going to the shop to get some cigarettes. I'm going to the shop to buy some cigarettes. Get and buy here mean the same thing, because the shop does not give cigarettes for free, does it? So get and buy here are contextual synonyms. Thing and purpose are not synonyms at word level, but I can create contexts in which they function as contextual synonyms. What purpose do you want it for? What thing do you want it for? For example, someone asks you to lend him a knife, and you want to know why he needs a knife. So you say, what purpose do you want it for? What thing do you want it for? So what here, purpose and thing become contextual synonyms. So when it comes to synonymy at word level, one can talk about three types of synonyms. Cognitive synonyms, which share the whole denotation and they are psychologically real at word level. Physionyms, which only share part of the denotation, and again, they are recognizable, psychologically real at word level. And finally, we can talk about contextual synonyms, whose synonymy is tied to a context, and they are often used by creative writers in literature, for example. We find lots of contextual synonyms. X and Y are synonymous, but within the context, in the poem or in any work of art. But outside that poem, they are not synonyms. That's why we call them contextual synonyms. Okay. Now, what about cognitive synonyms? Cognitive synonyms, all right, we have said that they share the whole denotation. Right? All right, if we have two cognitive synonyms, can we use them interchangeably in all imaginable contexts? And the answer is no. Why? Because we've said that there are no absolute synonyms. So how can we distinguish cognitive synonyms from each other? There are, in fact, many criteria that distinguish cognitive synonyms. Hide and conceal, for example, are cognitive synonyms. And they are used interchangeably in many contexts, but there are contexts in which they cannot be used interchangeably. Where's John hiding? Can I say, where's John concealing? And the answer is no. So this is a context where hide and conceal cannot be used interchangeably. Whereas in John hid his true feelings, John concealed his true feelings. Here we can see that hide and conceal are used interchangeably, and the two sentences paraphrase each other. So what criteria do we have to distinguish cognitive synonyms from each other? One important criteria is formality. We have pairs of synonyms whose members differ in formality. One is formal, the other is informal. Buy and purchase. Buy is informal, whereas purchase is formal. So in conversation, in daily conversation, we rarely use, if ever, use purchase. We always use buy. So if you're going to buy a car, to get a new car, right, you would not tell your friend that I'm going to purchase a new car, but rather I'm going to buy a new car. Get and obtain. Again, get is informal, obtain is formal. Deep and profound. Profound is formal. And there are scores of such pairs that differ in formality. Father and dad. Father is formal, dad is informal. And this can be pushed a step further. Daddy is probably, there are more constraints there. Age here comes in as a variable. So we expect daddy from children, not from adults. But also social class might come in as an intervening variable. So it's possible for an adult belonging to the upper class, we may hear the predicate daddy instead of dad or father. So in addition to formality here, we have a third member that is relevant to both age and social class. So formality is an important criterion that distinguishes between cognitive synonyms. Another important criterion is attitude. The members of the pair might express or might involve different attitudes. For example, die and pass away. Die is neutral. Pass away is or has a positive connotation, it's euphemistic. And both can be compared to kick the bucket, which denotes the same thing, or croak. Croak and kick the bucket are informal, or one may, they have a negative attitude. They are dysphemistic in nature rather than euphemistic. So here, these three predicates can be croak, die, and pass away. We distinguish them in terms of attitude. The attitude they are associated, each is associated with. Stingy and economical are similar in meaning, but one is positive in attitude and the other is negative in attitude. Economical has, John is an economical person. John is a stingy person. One has a positive attitude while the other has a negative attitude. Write and scribble. Scribble transpires a negative kind of attitude. Speak and babble. John came in this morning. He spoke a couple of words and left. John came in this morning. He babbled a couple of words and left. Not that babble here has a negative connotation, a negative attitude. So such pairs of cognitive synonyms can be distinguished in terms of attitude. Old and elderly. Again, elderly has a positive attitude. Old has a negative attitude rather than a positive. He's an old guy. He's an elderly guy. We can see that they differ in attitude. Cognitive synonyms can also differ in technicality. So we find pairs of synonyms where one is technical and the other is non-technical. For example, in semantics, we have the word word and the word predicate. They differ in technicality. Predicate is a technical word. Phoneme and sound. Heart and cardiac. Optic and eye. He has a heart problem. He has a cardiac problem. Not that heart and cardiac are cognitive synonyms, but one cardiac is a technical term. Cancer and tumor. When medical doctors interact with each other, talking about a patient, they would not use the word cancer. They would use the technical word tumor in order to lessen the negative impact of this illness. So tumor here is a technical word, which practically means cancer. So tumor and cancer are cognitive synonyms which differ only in technicality. A fourth important criterion is dialect. So we find synonyms in different dialects of the same language. For example, in English, we have two main dialects, British English and American English. And we find many pairs. One member belongs to British English and the other member belongs to American English. For example, lift and elevator, denoting the same object in the external world. Lift and ride. Give me a ride to the hospital. Give me a lift to the hospital. Cookies and biscuits. They denote the same object in the external world, but they belong to different dialects. Sidewalk and pavement, denoting the same thing in the external world. Sidewalk is American, whereas pavement is British. And we have scores of such pairs. For example, the parts of the car. If you look at the parts of the car, you find them receiving different labels in the two dialects. What's a hood in American English is a bonnet in British English. What's a boot in British English is a trunk in American English, and so on and so forth. So dialect here can distinguish cognitive synonyms. In Arabic dialects, we have lots of such synonyms. Shaf, ناظر, طالع, بص, bawa. Okay, oh, they are cognitive synonyms found in different Arabic dialects. Shubbak, Derisha. In the Gulf, what we call Shubbak in the Levant, they call Derisha in the Arab Gulf. I cannot imagine myself referring to the window using Derisha unless I'm doing this humorously. Why? Because Derisha does not belong to my dialect. The word in my dialect is Shubbak. In Standard Arabic, it is Nafida. In Gulf Arabic, it is Derisha. So all the three of them are cognitive synonyms. They belong to different dialects. One belongs to the Standard dialect, and the two others belong to Arabic vernaculars, spoken in different geographical areas. So, as we can see, this cognitive synonyms can be distinguished based on formality, attitude, technicality, and dialect. In addition to these four criteria, we have what we call normality conditions, which also tell us or indicate that we cannot find two words that can be used imaginably in the same context. So, all right, the members of the male can be distinguished based on any of the four criteria I have discussed, in addition to normality conditions. For example, wide and broad can be distinguished in terms of formality. Broad is more formal than wide. We can also distinguish them in terms of normality conditions. John is a broad-minded person. John is a wide-minded person. Is that possible? John has a broad mind. John has a wide mind. Wide is not acceptable, despite the fact that broad and wide are cognitive synonyms. Deep and profound. We distinguish them in terms of formality. Profound is formal. Deep is informal. But we can also distinguish them in terms of normality conditions. When describing feelings, we can use both, profound and deep. He expressed deep feelings towards his friend's death, or profound feelings. But when it comes to describing bodies of water, can we use profound? And the answer is no. This is a deep lake. Can I say this is a profound lake? This is not acceptable. Mature and ripe are cognitive synonyms. Ripe is more formal than mature, but we can also distinguish them in terms of normality conditions. When it comes to describing fruit, for example, we can use both. These grapes are mature. These grapes are ripe. But when it comes to describing people, can I talk about John as being a ripe person? This is not acceptable. It's only acceptable to talk about him as a mature person. So normality conditions here are an important criterion for distinguishing between cognitive synonyms. And these differences between cognitive synonyms prove that there are no absolute synonyms in language. It's true that we have scores of pairs that share denotation, and it's not possible for one to negate one and affirm the other within the same sentence. But it's also true that these pairs involve many differences relating to formality, attitude, dialect, technicality, and normality conditions. Synonymy, which is a sense relation at word level or predicate level, is paralleled by a sense relation at sentence level. That is paraphrase. So paraphrase involves two sentences that are the same, except for X and Y. And X and Y are cognitive synonyms. Paraphrase involves sentences that express the same proposition. So if we have two sentences that express the same proposition, we cannot imagine a situation where one is true and the other false. If one is true, the other must be true. If one is false, the other must be false. This sense relation is what we call paraphrase. And one of the sources, the important sources of paraphrase in language is cognitive synonymy, when we have two sentences that are the same except for X and Y. And X and Y are cognitive synonyms. So in that case, the two sentences paraphrase each other and they entail each other. John hid his true feelings. John concealed his true feelings. These two sentences express the same proposition and they entail each other. They paraphrase each other. We cannot imagine a situation where one is true and the other false, if we are talking about the same John, of course. I purchased a new car. I bought a new car. These two sentences paraphrase each other. They are the same except for X and Y. And X and Y are cognitive synonyms. So the two sentences paraphrase each other. They entail each other. They express the same proposition. What does that mean? This means we cannot imagine a situation where one is true and the other false. If one is true, the other must be true. If one is false, the other must be false. So cognitive synonymy here is an important source of paraphrase at word level. There are other sources of paraphrase at sentence level. Did I say word level? I should have said sentence level rather than word level. So other sources of paraphrase would involve structure. We can vary the structure without changing the wording. John is easy to please. It's easy to please John. Okay, these two sentences paraphrase each other. So this is called structural paraphrase. Mary seems to be happy. Mary seems happy. It seems that Mary is happy. I have just produced three sentences that paraphrase each other and they entail each other. We cannot imagine a situation where one, if we are talking about the same person, then if one is true, the other two must be true. Notice that paraphrase does not refer to meaning as such. The meaning might be similar, but it might not be identical. This simply means that if I have a proposition, I can express the proposition in many different ways, structurally, while maintaining the same proposition. but changing the structure and slightly changing the meaning. For example, John is a soldier. If only John were a soldier. Is John a soldier? Not that these three sentences, they involve the same proposition, but the proposition is asserted in one, it is wished in the second sentence, and it is questioned in the third sentence. So the proposition, the grammar of the sentence can change while still maintaining the same proposition. And the sense relation of paraphrase will hold between the sentences. John insulted Mary. It was John who insulted Mary. It was Mary who John insulted. What John did was insult Mary. The person who insulted Mary was John. Mary was insulted by John. I have produced many sentences while maintaining the same proposition, but not necessarily the same meaning. So paraphrase here involves two sentences that share the same proposition and they entail each other. We cannot imagine a situation where one is true while the other false. If John insulted Mary is true, then it was John who insulted Mary must also be true. Why? Because the two sentences express the same proposition. They paraphrase each other. This is the sense relation of paraphrase between sentences. It exists at sentence level. A third source of paraphrase, interestingly, comes from antonyms rather than from cognitive synonyms or from varying the structure. We have a special type of antonyms, which we will discuss not in this lecture, but in another lecture. We call converses or relational antonyms. Relational antonyms produce sentences where the predicator of the sentence relates to the arguments, may relate to the arguments in different ways by changing. We change the order of the arguments. And by changing the order of the arguments in the sentence, we can produce paraphrases. For example, John bought a car from Mary. Notice that buy and sell are converses, are relational opposites. So if John bought a car from Mary, if I start with Mary, I would have to use the predicator sell. Mary sold a car to John. So here, the two sentences are paraphrases of each other, and this paraphrase comes from converses. The converses buy and sell. Husband and wife are converses. They are antonyms and they are converses. John is Mary's husband. If I start with Mary, the argument Mary is John's wife. So John is Mary's husband and Mary is John's wife are paraphrases of each other. If one is true, the other must be true. Notice that this paraphrase is based on the use of relational opposites or antonyms, or what we call converses, like buy and sell, husband and wife, teacher and student. John is Mary's teacher. Mary is John's student. Here we have two sentences that paraphrase each other. So we have three main sources of paraphrasing language. We have cognitive synonyms, we have structural paraphrase, and we have converses or relational antonyms. All of them give rise to paraphrase, a sentence level. Okay, so much of synonymy. So let me move on to the second sense relation, which also exists at word level and a sentence level. At word level, we have hyponymy, and at sentence level, we have entailment. So here, hyponymy and entailment parallel each other the way synonymy and paraphrase parallel each other. So let me first look at hyponymy, which is a sense relation at word level. Hyponymy involves what we call sense inclusion. Sense inclusion when the sense of one predicate or one word is included in the sense of another predicate. We call this hyponymy. So animal, for example, a lion is an animal. So the sense of animal is included in the sense of lion. So in order for X to be a lion, it must be an animal. Notice that hyponymy is a very important sense relation. Our knowledge of the universe around us is largely based on hyponymy, classifying things. So under animals, under the predicate animal, we have lion, horse, camel, donkey, rat, rabbit. All of these are kinds of animals. So animal is the superordinate or the hypernym. And any of the others I have mentioned here is a hyponym. So horse is a hyponym of animal. Lion is a hyponym of animal. Rabbit is a hyponym of animal. So we classify things. In semantics, we hyponymize things, which simply means classifying things, categorizing things. Some hyponyms are general in nature, and some are very technical. It all depends on how knowledgeable the person is. For example, when it comes to the animal kingdom, for someone who is not a zoologist, he only has general hyponyms. For example, animal, under animal we have dog, under dog we have hound. So a hound is a kind of dog. A dog is a kind of animal. An animal is a kind of creature. A creature is a kind of thing. Okay, not that. So if, all right, for example, if X is a hyponym of Y and Y is a hyponym of X, then we can conclude that X is a hyponym of Z. For example, animal is a hypernym here, and dog is a hyponym. Dog, for its turn, may become a hypernym for hound or for poodle. Why? Because a poodle is a kind of dog. A dog is a kind of animal. We can conclude that a poodle is a kind of animal. So hyponymy here is a transitive relation. If X, a poodle here, is a kind of Y, a dog here, and Y is a kind of Z, an animal here, then we can conclude that X is a hyponym of Z. So all cases of hyponymy are transitive in nature. Hyponymy is a transitive relation. Flower. Daffodil. A daffodil is a hyponym of flower. So flower here is a hypernym and daffodil is a hyponym. This is what we call hyponymy. So hyponymy is a relation involving sense inclusion. The sense of one predicate is included in the sense of another predicate. So the more specific one is called the hyponym. The general one, or the more general, is called a hypernym or a superordinate. For example, vehicle. We can use vehicle as a hypernym or a superordinate. Car is a hyponym of vehicle. Toyota. A Toyota is a kind of car. So a Toyota is a kind of vehicle. So we can conclude that a Toyota is a kind of vehicle. Why? Because so we have car, a hypernym, and Toyota is a hyponym here. Under, okay, so Toyota here is a hyponym of car as well as a hyponym of vehicle. That is what we call transitivity, the fact that hyponymy is a transitive relation. Okay, so this must be clear by now. A related sense relation at word level here, which is also an important sense relation, is called meronymy. Meronymy, which may look similar to hyponymy, but in fact it's different. Why? Because meronymy is a part-whole relationship. Lock, for example, is a part of door, and door is a part of a room, and a room is part of an apartment, and an apartment is part of a building. The relation, sense relation between these predicates is meronymy. So meronymy expresses the fact that X is part of Y, whereas hyponymy expresses the sense relation that X is a kind of Y. So a lion is a kind of animal, whereas a lock is part of a door. It's not a kind of a door. That is the difference between meronymy and hyponymy. And one other difference has to do with transitivity. Note that all cases of hyponymy are transitive, but not every case of meronymy is transitive. Some cases are transitive and some cases are not transitive. For example, lock, door, room. A lock is part of a door. A door is part of the room. Can we conclude that a lock is part of the room? And the answer is no. But when it comes to body parts, for example, the nose is part of the face. The face is part of the head. Can we conclude that the nose is part of the head? And the answer is yes. So here we have a transitive relation, but in the previous example, we did not have a transitive relation. So when it comes to meronymy, some cases are transitive and some cases are not transitive. This contrasts with hyponymy, where all cases of hyponymy are transitive. Hyponymy is a transitive relation. Just like synonymy, hyponymy is paralleled by a sense relation at sentence level, that is entailment, which I have mentioned in this lecture when discussing paraphrase, the sense relation paraphrase between sentences, because if two sentences paraphrase each other, then they entail each other. Note that this is two-way entailment. Two-way entailment is based on sharing the same proposition between two sentences. If two sentences share the same proposition, then they entail each other. We have another type of entailment, which is based on hyponymy, that is one-way entailment. If we have two sentences that are the same, identical, except for X and Y, and one is X and Y involve a hypernym and a hyponym, then there must be some one-way entailment between them. One of them must follow from the other. So, for example, John bought an animal yesterday. John bought a donkey yesterday. Note that these two sentences are the same except for X and Y. X is an animal and Y is a donkey. So the second sentence must entail the first sentence. John bought a donkey entails that John bought an animal, but not the other way around. John bought an animal does not entail John bought a donkey. He could have bought a horse or a camel or a rabbit. Mary is picking apples on the farm. Mary is picking fruit on the farm. Here we have two sentences that are the same except for X and Y. X is apples, Y is fruit. So Mary is picking apples on the farm entails Mary is picking fruit on the farm, but not the other way around. Mary is picking fruit on the farm does not entail Mary is picking apples on the farm. She could be picking oranges or peaches or grapes. So the first sentence here, Mary is picking apples on the farm, entails the second sentence, Mary is picking fruit on the farm. Okay, so this is one-way entailment. And this kind of relation is based on hyponymy. So at word level, we have hyponymy. At sentence level, we have one-way entailment. So if we have two sentences that are the same except for X and X and Y are a hypernym and a hyponym, then one of them must entail the other, but not the other way around, depending on the way we order them. Mary is watering a palm. Mary is watering a tree. مثلا, a palm is a hyponym of a tree. So Mary is watering a palm entails Mary is watering a tree, but not the other way around. Notice that this sense relation is reversed when we negate sentences. If we negate sentences, the reverse kind of sense relation obtains. For here, Mary is watering a palm. Mary is not watering a palm. Mary is not watering a tree. Notice that Mary is not watering a tree entails Mary is not watering a palm. But Mary is not watering a palm does not entail Mary is not watering a tree, because she could be watering a flower, a plant, other than a tree. So when negating sentences, we have to reverse the hyponymy relation or the sense relation. So the one that has the hypernym entails the one that has the hyponym, but not the other way around. Okay, so when it comes to entailment, a sense relation between sentences, we have two types of entailment. We have two-way entailment and we have one-way entailment. Two-way entailment is based on sharing, two sentences sharing the same proposition. And one-way entailment is mainly based on hyponymy, a sense relation at word level. Okay, so in this lecture, we have discussed two sense relations at word level, or probably three sense relations here. We have discussed synonymy, hyponymy, and meronymy. All of them exist at predicate level. And we have discussed two sense relations at sentence level: entailment, paraphrase, and entailment. And within entailment, we have seen that there are two types of entailment: two-way entailment, arising out of paraphrase, and one-way entailment arising out of hyponymy. This is it. That's it for now. Okay. We'll meet in another lecture where I will talk about antinomy, which is a very important sense relation in language, as well as ambiguity. So the topic of my next lecture will be antonyms and ambiguity, which also exist at both word level and sentence level. Thank you very much and goodbye.